Welcome to today's deep dive.
It is great to be here.
And we are really exploring the incredibly complex, ever-shifting cultural layers of Berlin in the year 2026.
It's a massive topic.
It really is. Now, just to give you a sense of scale right up front, Berlin is a city roughly 9 times the size of Paris.
Which is just staggering when you think about it.
9 times. But, Paris feels meticulously planned. You have the grand boulevards, the symmetry, the architectural cohesion.
Very deliberate.
Exactly. Berlin, on the other hand, according to the sources we're looking at today, is famously described as a city that didn't get designed.
No, it really didn't.
It just happened.
Yeah, that accidental nature is actually the key to understanding the entire urban landscape.
Right. I mean, Berlin is a place shaped by decades of division, heavy destruction, obviously, subsequent reunification, and just this relentless, almost exhausting cycle of reinvention.
Exhausting is a good word for it.
Yeah. So what we're doing today is looking at how that unique, fractured history manifests in its culture right now in 2026.
And we are tracing a very specific tension throughout all of this.
Right. The collision between strict institutional preservation and raw, unpredictable impermanence.
That push and pull. And to map out that collision, we have a pretty fascinating stack of sources in front of us today.
We really do.
We are pulling insights from dispatches covering the 2026 Berlinale Film Festival, the brand new season program for the Berliner Philharmoniker.
Which is packed, by the way.
Oh, totally packed. And we've also got this underground architectural guide to the city's hidden courtyards from the Brevi app.
That one is so interesting.
Right. And finally, a 2026 traveler's roadmap to the historic Museum Island.
A great mix of sources.
So, okay, let's unpack this, starting with the cinematic scene.
Yeah, the film festival.
Because when we examine how high culture collides with rebellion, the 2026 Berlin International Film Festival basically serves as ground zero.
It really does. I mean, the Berlinale has always positioned itself as a global platform for radical, diverse voices.
Yeah.
But this particular year, the festival found itself caught in an incredibly intense structural and political bind.
A massive bind. And we're going to impartially lay out the sequence of events reported in our sources here, because the contrast between the institution and the artists was just stark.
Very stark.
It started at the opening press conference. Head jury member Wim Wenders stated that cinema should, quote, stay out of politics.
Which is a huge statement.
A total shock to the system for many attendees, primarily because it directly contrasted with the Berlinale's long historical track record.
Right.
They've always made very overt solidarity choices regarding global conflicts.
Yeah, and the friction at that opening press conference was really just the precursor to a much larger institutional crisis.
Things escalated quickly.
They did.
Yeah.
Following the festival, the German cultural minister, Wolfram Weimer, attempted to fire the festival director, Trisha Tuttle.
Wow.
Yeah, and the cited reason in the sources was alleged transgression.
Transgressions.
Exactly. And this maneuver quickly escalated into a massive international story.
I can imagine.
Ultimately, a wave of international pressure intervened, and Tuttle was allowed to stay on, though with some specific conditions attached to her tenure.
Right, and just looking at the facts here, the pressure applied behind the scenes sounds immense.
Nuts.
We're looking at a festival whose entire brand identity is built on giving a platform to dissenting radical voices.
Yep.
But when that festival relies heavily on state funds from a cultural ministry, you hit a structural paradox.
It's the classic problem.
Right. Like, how does an independent entity foster rebellion when the government holds the purse strings?
That is the defining structural difficulty of modern state-sponsored art. It is an almost impossible situation. You are trying to foster untamed, uncorrupted artistic expression while simultaneously navigating the rigid bureaucratic expectations of institutional and financial leverage.
It's a tightrope. But despite that bureaucratic tension, the art itself, the films, they provided an incredibly vibrant look at human isolation and rebellion.
The programming was incredible.
The variety was staggering. I really want to look at the mechanics of a few standout films, starting with The Ballad of Judas Priest.
Oh, this one.
Yeah, a documentary directed by Sam Dunn and Tom Morello.
See, that pairing alone signals a very specific approach to the material.
Definitely.
You have a seasoned metal documentarian teaming up with one of rock's most famously political guitarists.
Right, and the sources describe it as bursting with a surprising warmth, actually.
Warmth. That's interesting for a metal doc.
Yeah. They brought in massive fans like Jack Black, and rather than just focusing on the aggressive aesthetics of heavy metal, it paints a picture of community.
Oh, wow.
A shared passion. But then, the festival programming pivots completely to a film like Panda.
Which is so different.
It's completely different. From director Xingyang Zhang, we move from high-octane heavy metal to a black and white, lullaby-like journey through a ghostly, decaying version of Nanjing.
The thematic shift there is profound.
Yeah.
Panda follows 4 mysterious outcasts navigating a ruined landscape. And our critics specifically highlighted a deeply memorable scene where these characters hold a spontaneous jam session inside a sewer.
Inside a literal sewer.
Yeah.
It's such a striking image. You have these isolated individuals finding a moment of spontaneous creation in the literal decay of the city infrastructure.
It's beautiful, really.
It is. Then, in the generation section of the festival, we see rebellion take the form of absurd humor with Matapanki.
Matapanki.
Yeah, this is a Chilean punk superhero film where the protagonist gets his powers by drinking Matapanki.
Which is what exactly?
The traditional chaotic cocktail made from whatever alcohol happens to be available.
That is amazing.
Right. It uses that absurd premise to deliver a wildly funny anti-capitalist critique.
A superhero powered by a literal cocktail of teenage rebellion.
Basically.
That perfectly encapsulates the informal, uncorrupted energy that the festival attempts to protect. It uses humor to bypass traditional political lecturing.
Which brings us to the Silver Bear winner, a film called Rose, directed by Marcus Schleintzer.
Starring Sandra Hüller, right?
Exactly. She plays a mysterious soldier who arrives in a 17th century German Protestant village to claim an abandoned farm.
Sounds intense.
It is. The critics praised its incredibly dry humor, but more importantly, its nuanced handling of queer themes against the bleak historical backdrop of a witch hunt.
Wow.
So looking at the sheer range here, I mean, from a sewer jam session to a punk superhero to a 17th century witch hunt Dracula, it functions like a chaotic but brilliant buffet.
A buffet is a great way to put it.
It just forces you to constantly recalibrate your expectations.
What's fascinating here is how these films, despite their wildly divergent tones and settings, all echo Berlin's broader cultural identity.
How so?
Well, they dissect themes of rebellion, societal isolation, and queer history. You see this vivid connection between art and lived reality in the festival's retrospectives as well.
Oh, yes. The sources specifically point to a retrospective screening of the documentary Tunten lügen nicht.
Queens Don't Cry.
Yes.
Right, focusing on 1980s West Berlin drag queens. These performers weren't merely putting on late-night shows at the Shoes Club.
No, it was much more than that.
Their drag was a mechanism for direct, localized activism. During the most devastating heights of the AIDS crisis, they were educating the public, running for mayoral office, and literally operating a hospice.
Just incredible bravery.
The festival programming uses cinema to connect the audience directly to that radical, survivalist history of the city streets.
And, you know, that concept of cultural survival and friction doesn't stop at the cinema doors. It leads directly into the city's oldest institutions.
It really does.
When we look at the Berliner Philharmoniker, their entire 2025-2026 season is explicitly themed controversial.
With an exclamation mark.
Right, the exclamation mark.
They are actively leaning into the reality that classical music was never a peaceful, static art form.
We forget that.
We do. We tend to view orchestras through a lens of refined, untouchable perfection today. But the Philharmoniker is reminding audiences that this music was born out of intense cultural disruption.
Right. The programming explores these productive disputes in music history by placing massive historical clashes side by side.
Yeah.
We are looking at Mozart versus Salieri. We are looking at Brahms versus Liszt.
But the heavyweights.
Yeah, and they are restaging pieces that quite literally sparked riots at their premieres, like Stravinsky's The Sacre du Printemps and Bartók's The Miraculous Mandarin.
Actual riots.
Reading the historical context of these classical music conflicts, the dynamic is remarkably similar to modern-day rap beefs.
Rap beefs. That is so true.
You know, you have these larger-than-life personalities battling for the cultural narrative.
That analogy actually holds up remarkably well when you examine the mechanisms of those feuds.
Right.
Just like a modern music rivalry, these weren't merely polite disagreements about chord progressions or aesthetic taste.
Oh.
These were fundamental ideological battles. Brahms and Liszt, for example, represented entirely opposed visions for the future of German music and national identity.
Wow.
It was a fight for cultural dominance.
And the Philharmoniker has assembled an incredibly stacked lineup to execute this theme.
They really pulled out all the stops.
Chief conductor Kirill Petrenko is opening the season by pairing Bernd Alois Zimmermann's Oboe Concerto, featuring Albrecht Meyer, with Brahms' First Symphony.
A bold pairing.
And they are also taking the orchestra back to the Salzburg Easter Festival to perform Wagner's Das Rheingold, directed by the visionary Kirill Serebrennikov.
Wagner himself was the ultimate musical disruptor.
For sure.
I mean, he forced audiences to reconsider the boundaries of harmonic structure. The season also features performances of Mahler's monumental Eighth Symphony for the first time in 15 years.
15 years.
The sheer scale of that piece, often called the Symphony of 1,000 due to the massive vocal and orchestral forces required, is just an overwhelming undertaking.
A massive logistical challenge. Add in guest appearances by the violinist Janine Jansen as artist in residence, and a highly anticipated conducting debut by the legendary gambist Jordi Savall.
Jordi Savall, yes.
Who bridges early music traditions with these massive symphonic forces. The energy pulsing through the concert halls this year sounds intentionally combative.
Which is vital for the survival of the art form.
Really?
The Philharmoniker's season demonstrates that classical music requires passion, ideological friction, and even public controversy to remain relevant.
Yeah.
Without that tension, it becomes a museum piece rather than a living, breathing culture.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. Because that friction, that sense of hidden depths and sudden reveals, is baked into the physical geography of Berlin.
The streets themselves.
Yes. We are pulling out the Brevi Underground Guide now to hit the streets. Keeping in mind that Berlin is 9 times the area of Paris, the sheer physical scale creates a totally different urban dynamic.
The physical expansion of Berlin, combined with its history of division by the wall and heavy wartime destruction, left the city full of empty lots and abandoned spaces.
Right, all those voids.
That physical void created a landscape defined by impermanence. There was room for things to just sprout up unmanaged.
And the Brevi Guide breaks this down by keys, the local neighborhoods, and maps out the geography of these secrets.
It's a great way to navigate.
In Mitte and Prenzlauer Berg, the architectural mechanism you have to understand are the Hinterhof.
The hidden courtyards.
Exactly. These are interconnected hidden courtyards. Rather than an open street-facing culture, the architecture functions a bit like Russian nesting doll.
Oh, that's a perfect description.
You walk through a totally normal, unassuming street-level archway, and suddenly you are drawn inward into a maze of galleries, cafes, gardens, and century-old cellars completely shielded from the main boulevards.
It's a brilliant architectural adaptation. The life of the city happens on the inside of the block, hidden from plain view.
Yeah.
And then as you move south to Kreuzberg and Neukölln, you encounter the alternative heart of the city, where the geography of culture shifts from architecture to community spaces.
The guide highlights the Landwehr Canal walks, which basically function as the city's living room during the summer months.
Everyone is out there.
You also have the Späti culture, the late-night corner shops.
Okay.
These aren't just convenience stores. They operate as makeshift, democratic community hubs where people gather on the sidewalks.
So true.
Brevi points out underground cocktail bars hidden behind laundromat facades, and the massive Turkish street food scene, anchored by events like Street Food Thursday at Marktthal Noon.
But the guide also tracks how this ecosystem is constantly migrating due to gentrification.
Right, things change fast.
As Kreuzberg becomes more expensive, the creative friction moves northward to Wedding, establishing new hubs along the Ponke River amidst stunning 1920s social architecture like Schiller Park.
Yeah.
Or it moves east to Friedrichshain, taking over the Raagelende.
Now, the Raagelende is fascinating. It is a massive, former railway repair yard that has been completely reclaimed.
Completely transformed.
The industrial ruins have been repurposed into an intricate network of skate parks, street food markets, and open-air cinemas.
It's so Berlin.
And the city also completely reinvents itself based on the season. In the summer, you have the Badeschiff, a literal swimming pool floating in the Spree River.
I love that spot.
But when the harsh winter hits, the culture retreats indoors, or to highly localize, less tourist-heavy spots, like the Richard Platz Christmas Market in Neukölln.
Yeah, it adapts.
But reading through this app's features, I find myself questioning the premise a little bit.
Oh.
Well, if you are using a smartphone app that gives you turn-by-turn GPS guidance to a supposedly secret cocktail bar behind a laundromat, doesn't that inherently kill the underground vibe?
Ah, I see what you mean.
Like, can a hidden gem survive being digitized?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the concept of the Berlin Underground isn't reliant on strict, total secrecy.
Okay.
It relies on a relentless ecosystem of reinvention. The app might give you the GPS coordinates to a door today, but what is behind that door? Maybe a painted mural on an abandoned warehouse or a pop-up gallery in a cellar might be painted over, shut down, or transformed into something entirely different by next month.
That's a good point.
The impermanence is the point. The underground thrives specifically because it was never designed to last forever.
The impermanence is the culture itself. The city acts as a canvas that is constantly being erased and painted over.
Exactly.
However, in stark contrast to that fleeting street art and temporary nightlife, Berlin possesses an incredibly profound anchor.
The anchor of history.
Yes, we need to examine Museum Island, or the Museum Sinsel.
If the raw Gelände and the hidden courtyards represent Berlin's embrace of the temporary, Museum Island represents its absolute commitment to permanence.
Total permanence.
It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site situated right on an island in the middle of the Spree River, attempting to freeze time.
The philosophical origins of this space date back to 1830 with King Friedrich Wilhelm III. His vision was deeply tied to the ideals of the Age of Enlightenment.
He had big vision.
He wanted to take royal art collections, which were historically locked away in private palaces for the elite, and construct a public space to democratize that knowledge.
Over the next century, that Enlightenment ideal expanded into a massive complex of 5 distinct world-class museums.
5 of them.
Each utilizing a different architectural style to house a specific era of human history.
And the roadmap in our sources breaks down the sheer volume of history preserved here. You have the Altes Museum, which holds the foundational layer of Greek and Roman antiquities.
Incredible stuff.
Then the Newsies Museum preserves the absolute peak of ancient artistry, most famously housing the bust of Nefertiti alongside massive Egyptian collections.
The Altet National Gallery shifts into the 19th century, preserving the romantic works of artists like Caspar David Friedrich.
Beautiful paintings.
You also have the Bode Museum, which curates an expansive collection of sculptures and one of the world's largest numismatic or coin collections.
And finally, there's the Pergamon Museum.
Right.
The guide provides some very specific, practical mechanisms for navigating this massive complex in 2026, which actually will reveal a lot about how the city interacts with its history.
You need a strategy for this place.
For instance, major wings of the Pergamon are under heavy renovation through 2027. Even these monuments to permanence require constant physical intervention to survive.
Navigating 5 massive institutions on a single island can be an overwhelming logistical challenge for a visitor.
Very overwhelming. The guide suggests taking the U5 subway line specifically to the Museum Sinsel station because the station itself features an incredible starry ceiling.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
A modern architectural nod to the cosmic visions of the Enlightenment. It advises arriving on a Tuesday morning at 10:00 a.m.
They're specific.
Well, in a city defined by loud, chaotic friction, Tuesday morning offers the profound silence necessary to absorb antiquity.
That makes sense.
It also reminds travelers that the museums are closed on Mondays, though walking the island's grounds remains a free public experience.
Which is nice.
And it strongly advises purchasing the €24 day pass if you plan to visit more than 2 buildings, as it encourages you to wander seamlessly through millennia of history rather than treating it transactionally.
It is an unparalleled collection of the human endeavor.
It is. I understand the historical value, but I have to ask about the necessity of it in this specific city.
Why do you ask?
When the entirety of Berlin acts as a living, breathing museum of turbulent modern history, where you can physically touch the scarred remains of the Berlin Wall or trace the bullet holes still visible in 19th century courtyards, is dedicating a whole day to standing inside a temperature-controlled building looking at ancient coins truly essential to understanding the city.
The contrast is exactly why it is essential.
Yeah.
Museum Island represents a fundamental human drive to preserve the pinnacle of global history. The bust of Nefertiti has survived millennia.
That's true.
In a city like Berlin, a city that is otherwise entirely defined by rapid destruction, political division, and endless reinvention, you need that anchor.
The grounding point.
You need to experience the deep, silent permanence of antiquity to fully contextualize and appreciate the loud, chaotic impermanence of the city just outside those museum doors.
So, what does this all mean when we synthesize these sources?
It's a lot to take in.
Berlin reveals itself as a city built entirely on profound contradictions. It is a landscape where high-stakes cinematic controversies over state funding at the Berlinale exist alongside the historical, world-shifting ideological battles being restaged by the Philharmoniker.
A city of extremes.
It is a city where ancient Egyptian busts sit perfectly preserved in silence, just a short train ride away from an ephemeral punk rock bar operating behind a laundromat.
And that tension leaves you with a final provocative thought to mull over.
What's that?
If a culture is defined by both what we carefully curate behind temperature-controlled glass and what we spontaneously spray paint over on a concrete wall tomorrow, which approach tells the truer story of a society?
Wow.
Does our real legacy reside in our permanent, unmoving monuments, or is it found in the messy, temporary rebellions that we constantly reinvent?
That is a question that definitely challenges how we view our own cultural footprints.
It really does.
Ja, så vi har vist illuminare